It is a great honor for us to have you here. This is the first time the Deputy Director General for Nuclear Safety and Security is in Argentina, in South America, actually, they were telling me. Lydie Evrard. Lydie is an engineer. She has been appointed 2 years ago with this new position. But before that, she's also an engineer, and she holds a master's degree in oil and gas operations and a master's degree in public administration. Before joining the agency, she was working with the French government in the Ministry of Energy. So as I was telling you, it's a great honor to have you here. We also are happy to have the first Vice President, Vicepresidenta Primera de la Autoridad Regulatoria Nuclear, Marina Di Giorgio, joining here with other people from the Nuclear Regulatory Agency. So to have this visit here, last year we have the Director General. Is something very important for the Institute, for the community of the Instituto Balseiro and Centro Atómico Bariloche. Instituto Balseiro is almost 70 years old, but we are not for retirement, we are for continuing. And we have been, as the Institute, one of the main bones, let's say, columna vertebral of the National Commission of Atomic Energy in human training and capacity building. So we have many students here today that will be listening to your talk, and I hope they will get motivated to continue on the nuclear industry that we think has a huge future in the world. So I don't want to take too much time. So there will be some time for questions after the talk. Just please, Lydie, go ahead, and if you need something for us, you have water here. You can walk, you can stand.
Thank you.
You have your microphone.
I think I have my mic. Thank you very much for your welcoming address and the kind words. So it's my great pleasure to be with you this afternoon, and to see such a wide attendance. So
sorry, just quick interruption. This is a small present for you that we have here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's my great pleasure to be here. So I am visiting Argentina for the first time, South America for the first time as well. So I had let's say, a very interesting, I will maybe take the other one. So I started with some meetings yesterday in Buenos Aires. Today, this is my great pleasure to be with you in Bariloche. So I had some meetings this morning with INVAP. So as Mariano mentioned, my background is engineering. So I come from France. After more than 20 years in France, I let's say decided to take a new challenge and to go to an international organization, and of course with some link with my previous experience, because I had different positions in France with the Nuclear Safety Authority, the regulatory body in France. But of course it's completely different, and it's an eye-opening. So I will try this afternoon to share with you some part of my experience. You will see that there were some expected tasks, but some unexpected tasks since I joined, so in April 2021. And of course, I would be very happy to answer your questions after this kind of opening speech. So first, to start with a general presentation of the IAEA. So the IAEA, it's the International Atomic Energy Agency. It's an organization linked to the United Nations, but independent. So we work with processes very similar to the United Nations. We have some support from New York for some activities. You will see, in particular, with Ukraine, we have the support from New York, but the agency is independent. It's led by Rafael Mariano Grossi, so from Argentina, and with a very, let's say, dynamic way of leadership with new initiatives, and this will be part of my speech as well. So the agency has for motto atoms for peace and development. So you can make the link with the United Nations, of course, concept and philosophy. So, but it's a technical body focused on a mandate dedicated to nuclear energy, nuclear applications, with this, let's say, ultimate objective to promote safe, secure, and peaceful uses of nuclear technology and nuclear applications. So this is a, let's say, ambitious objective, given that, of course, member states remain fully, they keep their sovereignty on any matters linked to nuclear energy and nuclear applications. So this is this kind of approach, which is our daily, let's say, business, how to provide support to member states for them to benefit from nuclear energy, nuclear technology, and nuclear applications. The membership of the agency is 177 member states. That means that we have a very wide range of member states with different expectations and different, of course, needs. So that's another, part of our job, how to make, this collective and global knowledge something fully useful for the international community. So that's the, let's say, definition of our mission. I am Deputy Director General for one of the departments. The agency is composed of 6 departments. So as Deputy Director General, I am the head of one of these departments, and this is a department of nuclear safety and security. So I will now move more on to these, specific topics, and just as a reminder, I would like to give you the definition of nuclear safety and security, so that we are on the same page for the rest of the speech. So nuclear safety is the prevention of nuclear accidents. So that means non-intentional, events. So nuclear safety deals, for instance, with Chernobyl, 3 Mile Islands, and Fukushima. That's one of some examples, where nuclear safety was at the heart of the accident, and one of the reasons why we are so much involved in analyzing these kind of events and identify lessons learned, so that these kind of accidents do not happen again. So this is for nuclear safety. Nuclear security is the prevention of malicious acts. So in fact, the prevention and the protection against terrorism, for instance, sabotage. So this kind of, intentional, acts. The department deals with both components. That means that we are aimed at making the best benefit from synergies between safety and security. This is not completely, let's say, the same approach regarding transparency, for instance. Of course, you are supposed to be very transparent with regard to nuclear safety, because this is a learning, opportunity. But for security, you cannot be as transparent as for safety, for obvious reason, and for protection. So just to give you an example of this kind of, delineation between the two fields. However, there are some commonalities, and of course, we need to be consistent when we address safety and security at a facility. So that's the definition for and the missions of the department. The department implements different activities to provide member states with support for them to strengthen their national frameworks in the field of nuclear safety and security. First, the agency developed some international safety standards. So this is high-level documents developed with member states. So there is a very strong involvement of member states. And then we establish some documents which are key documents for all activities when it comes to international activities. Because, for instance, in Argentina, you have your national law, decree, regulatory framework. So as long as you remain in Argentina, of course, you do not need, additional, let's say, requirements, but you can take benefit from other experiences, gained by other member states, and then you can, take some good practices from the international, knowledge for the country to strengthen or to improve some practices. So that's how that works. We mobilize this kind of international expertise and experience for us to develop these standards and then to put these standards at the service of the international community. This is this kind of knowledge transfer that makes step by step, national frameworks stronger and more robust. So that's one of the first activities and one of the most important ones for the Department of Nuclear Safety and Security. But once we have these standards, it's not the end of the day. We need to provide support to implement these standards. So you can have a very nice, documents, but if they are not implemented, you are not, of course, this is not fully efficient. So we provide support to member states for them to implement these standards in their national frameworks with, in particular, peer reviews, for instance. So some experts from member states come to a country and then they provide some recommendations. They review the national practices with regard to these international standards and they provide some recommendations. This is, of course, up to the state to decide whether it wants to implement this directly or not, but this is a kind of guidance for each member state to be able to identify where it can improve its own practices. So in Argentina, this mission, there was one mission last year, so in 2022, with the peer review on the regulatory framework, and there are other missions, for instance, at nuclear power plants. So you can have a team of technical experts from other countries, and then they come to the country, to Argentina. They have 1 or 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks on site, and they review different practices and they provide some recommendations. So this is the same approach, and gradually we can observe that this is this kind of mutual, learning. So, because even when you come to the country to review the national practices, you learn from this country. This is a kind of combined learning with you bring your own experience, but you, of course, benefit from what you can observe. So that's something very positive. That takes some time, and but this has been now established for years and decades. So gradually, we can improve, safety and security worldwide through international cooperation. The third component of our regular activities is linked to what we call capacity building. In some member states, there is a need to develop regulatory frameworks to have people trained on nuclear safety and security, and then the agency can provide assistance for this. So we can provide funds for in particular, and then technical officers to help, member states to develop a better their capacity to better address nuclear safety and security and to benefit from nuclear applications and nuclear technologies. So this is an overview of our regular activities. So we have been working on these different activities for decades now. So with gradually, more robust framework for nuclear safety and security worldwide. So this is, of course, a kind of a continuous improvement, and that's very important that we continue to dedicate, the resources needed for this. So this was the overview of our regular activities, and now I would like to share with you some feedback and updates on some top priorities of the agency and some activities which are linked to this, to our mandate, but with some, let's say, very specific and sometimes uniqueness because of the context. So I will start with Fukushima. So Fukushima, as you may know, there are many tanks on site which store some treated water. So after the accident, there were some needs to cool for cooling systems, and there was some water, generated on site, and contaminated water, contaminated in particular with tritium. So you may have in mind these kind of pictures from of Fukushima with many blue tanks everywhere on site, with no space to conduct the decommissioning activities which are needed to reach a safer, status at the plant. In 2021, the government of Japan decided that this water, after treatment, would be released into the sea with very low level of tritium, but still some remaining, very low level of tritium. It was something completely, let's say, yes, unprecedented because of the amount of water on site first. Second, because this is linked in the this is perceived as something linked to the accident, of course, and with this kind of sensitivity with regard to public acceptance. So the government of Japan requested the support from the agency to conduct a comprehensive review, safety review of the plans related to this release of the water into the sea, and a safety review against these international safety standards I mentioned earlier. So that means that we had to review all the plans prepared by Japan. So Japan, that means the operator, so TEPCO, the regulatory body, NRA, so the Nuclear Regulation Authority in Japan, and other provisions taken by the government of Japan. So we reviewed all these documents against safety standards that took more than 2 years with a large group of experts, some experts from the agency, but we involved experts from other member states, exactly for the same reason as the one I mentioned earlier. That means that you are more robust in your assessment when you combine different expertise and different practices. So that's how we combine this kind of expertise within this group, which is called the Task Force for Fukushima. So it's approximately 10 experts from the agency, 11 from member states. So, and within this group, we involved neighboring countries, so China, Korea, Vietnam, Australia, Russia, the Pacific Island, so with one of their representatives from the Marshall Islands, and some other member states with some technical knowledge on this kind of practice, So because the release of water into the sea is something that it's a regular practice for nuclear power plants. So the other experts are from Argentina, Canada, US, UK, and France. So this is, just to give you an example how we combine expertise to mobilize different experiences and different views, because we have this conviction that when you gather people with different views and different expertise and experience, you have a more robust, assessment. So for the last 2 years, they have reviewed a lot of documents, and they issued different interim reports, so topical reports. And the final report was issued in July, so it's what we call the comprehensive report, after more than 2 years of significant efforts and days and days of safety review against these international safety standards. The safety review concluded that the release of the water as planned was consistent with safety standards, and that no radiological impact was expected from this release. So that's the two main conclusions of this comprehensive report issued in July. And even if, of course, it was not legally binding for Japan, they took note of some recommendations for the follow-up activities once the release starts. So the release started in August. So now we are in this process of reviewing the safety aspect of the release, but during the release of the batches. 2 batches were completed, so in August, September, and Japan is preparing for the next one. So far, no specific issues have been observed, but we are now on site with some people from the agency monitoring how these activities are progressing and making sure that in the mid and long term, the practices and the release of the water will remain fully consistent with safety standards, which are, the international reference for all member states. So this is how we can, provide insurance that the release is conducted in a safe and transparent manner. And of course, we publish our report. We ask, questions to the operator, to the regulatory body, to have a comprehensive, review, and to keep, our this technical dialogue very closely with Japanese, counterparts. We hold some press conferences as well to inform, people in Japan and beyond about our, activities. Last week I was in Japan, and we had this kind of, press conference with technical questions for journalists to better understand, our mission and the conclusions of the review. So that's on this first, let's say, major priority for the agency, to continue to provide support, including, to a very, let's say, robust and strong member states as Japan, but to have another perspective and to provide additional assessment so in an independent, objective manner, to provide the international community with some other, input. And I think this is this combination of different assessment that that's very helpful for the public to better understand, what is at stake. So that's one example. I would like now to move to another one, which is the small modular reactors, because in Argentina there is a project on small modular reactors with the CAREM. So on this topic, there are high expectations from many member states, because small modular reactors, so SMRs, are considered by some member states as the best solution for them to have access to a more secure supply of electricity at a reasonable cost. So that's something obvious when you discuss with, member states and in Vienna. They convey their needs for and expectations for the deployment of SMRs, for them to take benefit from this technology for the desalinization, for instance, but even, to provide some electricity in remote areas. So having said that, SMRs are most of them still at the stage of development, and the agency would like to provide additional support to facilitate and accelerate as possible, the safe and secure deployment of SMRs. So how can we do this? It's the same principle. We mobilize different, expertise and experience from member states, and we try to define a common, a framework for SMRs to facilitate the licensing process. Because when you have a new technology or a new design, what could be, what could take some time is the licensing process, because everything is new. So that means that you do not have any previous, practices to refer to. So SMRs are in this kind of situation. It's new concepts for some of them. We expect some improvements with regard to safety, but we have other challenges because some tools designed to assess safety for larger reactors are not fully, let's say, appropriate for SMR. So this is a kind of, combination of different aspects with this role that the agency can play to facilitate a kind of common framework for the licensing of SMRs. And this is what we call the NESI, so Nuclear Harmonization and Standardization Initiative, launched in 2022 with different steps, but with this ultimate objective to provide member states with a common, framework to facilitate the safe and secure deployment of SMRs. And last but not least, I would like to give another example of the support we provide, and concrete example we provide to member states. So it's on Ukraine. Since the beginning of the war, so the agency has been present, and we went many times to Ukraine. So with the delegations, the delegation led by the DG, we went to Ukraine 8 times, including to Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. So the objective with Ukraine is to provide Ukraine with some support to help Ukraine maintain nuclear safety and security during the armed conflict. So the conditions are completely unprecedented, because this is the very first time that the agency provides support to a member state during a war. There were some, let's say, examples of course, war with in countries with nuclear facilities, but shorter period of time first, and not as huge as the nuclear fleet in Ukraine. So this is something completely new. We started in March 2022 with an agreement with Ukraine to provide them with a comprehensive program of assistance, mainly through the provision of equipment for safety and security, and second, through the provision of technical assistance remotely, but mainly in person in Ukraine. So we started with the deployment of technical people from the agency, from the Department of Nuclear Safety and Security, at different sites, in particular Chernobyl, because Chernobyl was seized, for a couple of weeks by Russia. So when Russia left, there were some, let's say, needs to review the current status of the facility regarding safety and security. So we deployed a team of experts in safety and security at Chernobyl. they conducted 2-3 missions to have a better understanding and to provide some support to Ukraine in this regard. So it was in the summer 2022, and the biggest challenge was with Zaporizhzhia, because Zaporizhzhia, as you know, is in the middle of the war zone. So it's in the territory is occupied by Russia, but it's a Ukrainian nuclear power plant. Then we deployed what we call the continuous presence at Zaporizhzhia after discussion with both sides, which took weeks and months. Team of 3-4 experts from the agency is now deployed at Zaporizhzhia in a continuous manner. That means that every month there is a rotation, and that means every month the team has to cross the front line, and so one direction of course, back to Vienna in the other direction. So we have many experts involved in these rotations with the objective to assess continuously safety and security at the nuclear power plant and to be able to report on the current status of the nuclear power plant with regard to safety and security. So we started at Zaporizhzhia in September 2022, and at the end of 2022, Ukraine requested that we deploy the same continued presence at all sites. So the 3 other operating nuclear power plants in the territories under the control of Ukraine, but Ukraine requested the presence of the agency to monitor the potential implications of the war. So 3 operating nuclear power plants, Khmelnytsky, Rivne, and South Ukraine, and the Chernobyl site. So that means that currently we have continuously 12 people from the agency deployed in Ukraine. They rotate every month approximately, and they report, they assess every day. They have technical discussions with the technical counterparts on site, and they report to the Director General of the IAEA through the Department of Nuclear Safety and Security, and they provide their assessment. And when there are some critical, aspect, of course, they raise this, and we raise this publicly, because this is for the benefit of, let's say, the international community, that the situation at Zaporizhzhia in particular is correctly, let's say, monitored. We are doing this with regard to this international safety standards and nuclear security guidance document. So that means that we are, again, within this wide mandate to provide support to member states to apply these safety standards. But as you can, obviously, imagine this is a very specific conditions and completely unprecedented. So this is now where we stand. That means that nobody knows, how this will evolve. So we need to be flexible. We need to anticipate and to find some ways for us to adapt our activities to this additional, of course, workload and mobilization of resources, because this is significant after months. So this is probably one of the lessons learned from the last months, and my last 2 years at the agency. We need to maintain our regular activities, so this is key, but we need to be able to adapt to new challenges and to be able to address new issues in a, let's say, ad hoc manner. So there is not, there is no standardized, mission. We need to adapt. When you compare Fukushima to Ukraine, and then if you consider, SMR, so these are completely different examples. But the commonality is that all these activities are aimed at meeting member states' expectations or providing a higher level of safety and security worldwide, and this is having this ultimate objective in mind, we need now to find, the best and the most appropriate way to meet these expectations. So it's just to give you an overview of what we are doing. As you can observe, there are, let's say, a wide range of activities, mobilizing technical skills, of course. Most of the technical people of the department are experts in nuclear technology, so that's why I think it's important to highlight that the value added when we have this expert from so many different member states. So they have a very strong background in nuclear safety and security, a wide range of activities: nuclear safety, radiation safety, emergency preparedness and response, waste management safety, transport, security. So the wide of the topics is the range of topic is very, very wide. So it just to share with you how, fascinating, I would say, and diverse, the activities related to nuclear energy, nuclear application, is, and for you, very ready to have your studies, completed in a very short term. I think that's a very good opportunity to have this possibility to work in such a promising and a fascinating, area. So thank you very much for your attention, and I would be happy, of course, to answer your questions. Thank you.
Tenemos tiempo para algunas preguntas. I have one question. You were talking about the water that is being released. That is water that have been used for cooling the reactors, right? And is that process continuing now? So what is the perspective for how long this process will continue, the cooling and the release of the treated water?
So this water comes from different sources. First, it was the water used to cool the reactors in 2011, and this water was stored. So it's a kind of major part of the water stored. But the reactor still needs to be cooled. So that means that additional water is still generated. And in addition to that, there are some rain waters, and these rain waters is part of the water, which is, let's say, so this water circulates under the underground and needs to be pumped, not to be released, as it is. So there are different sources of water. In 2011. The production of water was very, very, the generation of water was very significant. Now Japan, with different, arrangements, technical arrangements, for instance, with some protection to avoid too much water from rainwaters, to go into the soil. So they have limited the new flow of water. But there is still some water contaminated and generated every day, even if it's at lower levels. So that will remain. Now the big challenge is to, let's say, manage the backlog with this huge amount of water stored for so many months at Fukushima, and of course to continue, but the additional amount of water is less than it was in the past, of course.
Questions? What is the situation of the other reactors in Japan right now? Are they operational, or are they starting to operate reactors?
In the rest of Japan, you mean?
Yes.
So there are some of them, ready to to be restarted. Some of them will be, in shutdown for permanently, in shutdown. So what is the challenge in Japan is to take the decision, to make the decision, and social acceptance is one of the key topics. How to explain to the civil society that all these reactors can be restarted, without...
There were 52, right, operational at that time?
Yes, or maybe 54. Oh. Yes, it was, significant. Japan was one of the biggest, nuclear fleets before the accident. I think it was maybe on the fourth, level of...
How many of those reactors could be operational right away? Or do they need to be modified in any way from the lesson learned? Or?
Yes, some of them have been declared not at the level required to be, restarted. So some of them will never be restarted. Some of them would need some, let's say, improvement. But now it's more regarding the process, this licensing process to restart the reactors. And yes, with usually there are some public consultations. You cannot restart these kind of facilities without the proper, implication of local residents. So this is another important part, I think, linked to safety. There are some technical matters, and this is, I would say, the minimum. So we need to address properly technical aspect, but then there are transparency and how to address some concerns with regard to public acceptance and social acceptance. The release of the water from Fukushima, this is exactly, this kind of challenge. How can we explain that releasing so much water will not affect the environment? So this is not only technical, matters. This is how to explain that. That's with the social factor. Yes. So
how do you think is that part in Japan, the social feeling about nuclear energy?
I would say
or in Europe as well.
Yes.
Because Germany also shut down all the reactors. What are they going to do in the near future?
Yes, I think it's part, of this kind of approach. Of course, is up to the government to listen to these different concerns and to try to find a way to address this. I would maybe focus on the release of the water into the sea, the treated water. When we started the review in 2021, I remember the very first press conference. There were many questions, but more political questions, so linked to this social acceptance. To what extent this can be accepted, was it reasonable, and some political dimension linked to the project, but not to the technical and radiological impact. So that was the very first press conference with many questions like this, and gradually we moved to some more technical questions, and journalists willing to better understand the technical substance of the project and not only the political context. So I think we need to listen to these concerns because we need to provide clear answers. We cannot ignore that this kind of major project can raise some concerns, of course, and we need to listen to this and to find ways to explain with objective, science-based arguments that the release meets high level of safety and is conducted in a transparent manner, because this is important for people to be confident that nothing is hidden. But that will, I think this is at least midterm, undertaking. We will not solve this kind of concerns overnight, and this is not, I would say, This is not our objective. As in my capacity of head of the Department of Nuclear Safety and Security, what matters the most to me is that we can explain to people that what is ongoing in Japan is conducted in a consistent manner with what we consider as the high levels of safety or radiological safety worldwide. And then people can make their own judgment, whether it's safe, if it's, I think it's a two-step approach. My objective is not to convince people directly, no, it's to provide people with the right, assessment or objective assessment that this is, conducted consistently with international safety standards, but then for people to make, their own judgment on this. And I think that's important that we provide information for people to make their own opinion on this.
Hi, thank you. I have one question regarding the war situation. How does the agency respond to the concern that people may have about whether nuclear power plants are safe in scenarios where one of the plants could attack on target the nuclear power plant? Is there any specific international legislation or what is the response?
Thank you. So thank you very much. It's one of the questions raised. So we are dealing at the same time with the ongoing war, with the presence of the agency there, and we are collecting some feedback. So in short, the international safety standards are not, of course, specifically designed for a war, for war conditions, but when you consider, the requirements, they are fully applicable. So that's very interesting. It's not designed for a war, situation, but basic, principles such as, all safety systems should be, maintained, monitored, and so on, remain fully applicable. So what is specific is how we can implement these, safety principles when there are specific conditions with a war, situation. So our conclusion is that we can apply these safety standards. That's something now, let's say, clear. And we are working on the second part, which is how to implement this and how to fully implement this. We can implement part of this international safety standards, but some of them are very challenging to implement. For instance, so we have defined 7 pillars. These 7 pillars for maintaining safety and security during an armed conflict deal with off-site power. For instance, when you have a nuclear power plant, you need some off-site power to maintain some systems. In Ukraine, 7 times, Zaporizhzhia lost all external power lines. So sometimes for a short period of time, sometimes for more than that, so with a couple of hours. So the principle and of having some off-site power is, of course, applicable. The implementation, when you cannot keep under control, the functionality of the off-site power lines, this is a big challenge. So this is one example. Another one is, with staff. We need to have, the safety standards require that a nuclear power plant is operated by staff without undue pressure and without any, let's say, psychological, pressure. So now, just if you consider what's the situation at Zaporizhzhia. So we have a Ukrainian operator with some staff, from the Ukrainian operator still, working at the nuclear power plant. And there are, of course, staff from Russia. So you have a kind of combination of, teams. First, second, the country is at war. So let's imagine when you're, you work at a nuclear power plant. your family is, you know, in Ukraine or could be abroad, with some this kind of, you know, very tough conditions, personally, that may have some implications on safety. So, you know, when you consider the different, so there are 7, you know, topics like this. Another one is with supply chain. How can you imagine that, that at Zaporizhzhia you have a supply chain that is fully operational? No, you cannot have a supply of all, you know, equipment, even if we consider that some equipment and supply, logistical, you know, supply is still, you know, acceptable. But after 18 months, you know, that's something that becomes more difficult to conclude that everything is okay. So we are working on a document with this specificity that the war is not over. That means that we are still learning. So we are, you know, preparing a kind of interim report with this objective of collecting what we have learned from the first 18 months, and then to try to keep, you know, some knowledge on this and how to implement and to address some challenges specific to the war. But it's one of the examples why it's so unprecedented, and nuclear power plant is not designed, you know, for a war.
But do you also analyze the case when there is actually a natural attack? The nuclear power plant is a target. Is that also considered, and how do you deal with that situation, which is it's a real intention in doing that?
So first, there is a resolution from the IAEA. So in 2009, there was a resolution, you know, adopted by member states that a nuclear power plant should not be, you know, targeted. So far, Zaporizhzhia has not been targeted. So even if there were some, you know, implications on site. What the DG has developed is what we call the 5 principles, and these principles presented to the United Nations Security Council are aimed at establishing exactly this kind of red line, that you should not, you know, fight the nuclear power plant. You should not attack from the nuclear power plant, because Zaporizhzhia is really, you know, between the 2, you know, territories now. So there are some, let's say, principles. So not to attack from the plant, not to attack the plant, not to have heavy military equipment on site. So not to use the nuclear power plant as a military basis. So this is the maximum of what we can do within our mandate. We do not have, you know, the responsibility or, you know, let's say, mandate of the United Nations Security Council, but because this kind of, you know, events may have some implications on safety, then we have this kind of red line, and we are, you know, monitoring the situation with regard to these 5 principles. But, you know, this is completely new for everybody. Thank you.
¿Hay alguna otra pregunta después de esta? Ya tendríamos que ir, si no terminan. Bien, Jen.
What are the consequences for member states that violate this kind of red line that you just talked about?
The consequences for member states?
The consequences for the member states that target a nuclear power plant.
So you mean not Ukraine, but for the other member states?
Any member state.
Yes. So why? So there is a very strong support from member states for the agency to be present in Ukraine for many reasons. First, because many member states, of course, all member states have a view, their respective views on the conflict. So, you know, of course, there are different, you know, views, but there are many member states very, you know, supportive of providing some help to maintain safety and security, because I think First, if there were a significant accident, the consequences would not be only in Ukraine. So, if it depends on the scenario, of course, but if there was a significant, damage on the containment of the reactors, and there are 6 reactors at Zaporizhzhia, all are in cold in shutdown, 2 in hot shutdown, but there are still some spent fuel. So depending on the scenario, you may have some radiological, consequences. Well, beyond Ukraine borders, and I think, this is this kind of threat of a nuclear accident that is, in the mind of many member states. That means that if something was to happen at Zaporizhzhia, that may, have some impact on every member state that has, a nuclear field. It's that's this kind of threat with a potential very severe accident, with a very large nuclear power plant in Europe that with other many member states, of course, that will be impacted, and that's why we have such let's say strong support, and why so many member states are concerned by the situation in Ukraine.
Is there any other question? Okay, we thank you again for visiting us and for the talk.
Thank you.